Are inspectors in or out? How come we're getting such different versions from both sides?
Well, part of the problem is, Joe, that Trump likes to tweet out purported progress in these negotiations when those terms are actually not in a deal. It may be part of the negotiation process, but what we're hearing, I think, from Tehran is that, whoa, we've got to actually work out the details of this thing before you go parading out with some of these accomplishments. So, at this point, it is certainly Trump's wish, it is his aspiration that there are some sort of nuclear inspections. That being said, Joe, the bar is very much set as to where the nuclear inspections were under the old JCPOA, those unprecedented, intrusive inspections. I don't think we have seen yet any indication that Iran is giving that level of access.
Saw you in the Washington Post this morning, Brett, because one of the big questions is why J.D. Vance? Why not Marco Rubio? And I was compelled by the answer. As you said, it is also because Rubio knows a dumb diplomatic deal from a distance. And this one with Iran has disastrous emblazoned all over it. Is that why he was not in Switzerland last weekend and is in the Middle East today?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Trump's diplomatic team is, who engages on what. And what we have been seeing from Marco Rubio, who without question is the savviest of international players on Trump's team, is that he's somewhat selectively engaging on things like Venezuela and takes a lower profile on issues like Iran. And that, I think, is indicative, Joe, of the fact that he sees some of the flaws in this deal, in this process. And while Vance, is quick to embrace and look, better than anyone in Washington, a vice president wants to be able to take hold of an initiative, to get out there in front of the cameras. But, Rubio has the smart sense to understand that this is perhaps a losing effort and one that he would rather have some diplomatic detachment from. And I think that's what we're seeing.
That's fascinating. He'll be in UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain the next 3 days. Of course, all three were targeted by Iran in some of the darker hours of this conflict. I need to ask you about Israel, Brett. The president was asked yesterday about Israel essentially digging in its positions in Lebanon and what that might mean for a greater peace deal with Iran. This is a back and forth with reporters yesterday in the Oval Office. Let's listen.
Earlier today, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his forces are not leaving Lebanon. That is a sticking point.
Who did he tell that to you?
He said it publicly in Israel.
Well, we're going to take a look at it.
Well, what would you do to make sure that he doesn't?
Well, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do, but it gets solved. I'm a problem solver. I get problems solved real fast, including with Bibi.
The president in conversation with my buddy Ed O'Keefe. I'm not going to tell you, but I'm a problem solver. And I could solve this problem real fast. Brett, if that's the case, how come he hasn't yet?
Yeah, and those one-liners are starting to wear, and the evidence of the last year and a half of his struggles, whether it's on Ukraine or now Iran and Israel, are evident. And this is the challenge with the approach that Trump has taken, is he, got into this war with Bibi Netanyahu, who everyone knows in Washington is a bit of a slippery character, and controlling him, sure, he will abide Trump on certain things, but where he sees his own critical personal interest or the national security interest of Israel deviating from Washington, he's not necessarily to give that ground. And it's what makes getting this triangular diplomacy between Tehran, Jerusalem, and Washington to work.
Is it a problem, lastly, Brett, that we don't have another set of talks, another round on the calendar? Should that not have been part of the conversation in Switzerland?
Well, this has very much been cart before the horse. Normally, you would have a process in place. You would have some of these key details in place. And Joe, I've got to tell you that every time that Trump, parades out with one of these purported concessions that Iran has made, it makes him look weaker. We lose leverage as part of that, because then we've got to go back and find a way to make that work, to make it happen. So, as someone who's a recovering diplomat, I cringe with, a bit of anxiety in how the Trump team is handling this thing. I certainly hope for the interests of the U.S. and the global economy it goes well, but this is amateur hour, again and again in the Iran negotiations.